Part 2. Nehru didn't think highly of Tibet.
Yes, religion should include, of course, spirituality. But religion also becomes institutionalized, with rigid forms, rigid dogmas. I don't consider them spiritual at all.
Yes.
They may be good or bad, but it doesn't matter. But they are restrictive, they give a certain rigidity to a person's mind. Now, mind you, religion may help a person. I mean, rigid forms of belief may help a person in the sense that they give a little comfort. They suppress doubts. You can't, responsibility you put on somebody else. Therefore, it's helpful. But any rigidity prevents growth, mental growth, spiritual growth, and all that. So, insofar as religion becomes too much attached to institutions and rigid dogmas, there is danger of the element of spirituality becoming less.
Nehru was a lifelong critic of organized religion and famously promoted secularism. In his 1936 autobiography, Nehru wrote, quote, "The spectacle of organized religion in India and elsewhere has filled me with horror, and I have frequently condemned it and wished to make a clean sweep of it. Almost always, it seemed to stand for blind belief in reaction, dogma and bigotry, superstition, exploitation, and the preservation of vested interests." Close quote. As Prime Minister of India, he took a dim view of the Tibetan cause. In a note to his Foreign Secretary on December 26, 1956, Nehru wrote derisively about Tibet's feudal and monastic systems. Quote, "The traditional way of life in Tibet is completely feudal under a garb of religion. If one thing is certain, it is that this traditional way of life cannot continue now that Tibet has come face to face with the modern world. There is bound to be land reform. If the monasteries, who own vast estates, resist this land reform, they will fail in doing so ultimately, and the whole structure of Buddhism, based on these monasteries, will also suffer. If Tibet wants to keep the essence of Buddhism, it will have to give up these accretions which have nothing to do with religion and which are opposed to modern conditions." Close quote.
The Potala, in all its inspiring glory, towers above the city of Lhasa, just as the Buddhist religion dominates the life of the people. Under its gold-encrusted roofs are the tombs of the previous Dalai Lamas in jewel-studded sepulchres. The great road links the Potala, winter home of the Dalai Lama, with the summer palace, his residence from May until October. The Lion of Tibet guards the gate of the summer palace. The grounds cover over 500 acres of gardens and animal preserves. The architecture of its buildings is considerably influenced by the Orientals, but its singular splendor is truly Tibetan. The ornaments bordering the roofs are covered with a layer of pure gold. The workmanship reflects the patience and inspiration of the people that contributed these buildings to their Dalai Lamas.
The Dalai Lama, God King of the Tibetan people, revered throughout the Buddhist world. Rarely seen outside his mountain homeland, his visit is a great spiritual event to millions who believe he is one who has earned the right to the eternal peace of nirvana, but has consented to rebirth for the sake of his fellow men. The Chinese conquest interrupted Tibet's traditional friendship with India, so the Dalai Lama's reception by Premier Nehru makes history in more senses than one.
In his direct dealings with Tibetan officials, Nehru was often dismissive and short. He didn't accept their view that Tibet was legitimately independent. In 1950, when asked by a visiting delegation to recognize Tibet's independence, Nehru replied, quote, "The government of India will continue the policy of the British period in considering Tibet outwardly a part of China, but internally independent. As to India acting as witness to any agreement between Tibetans and the Chinese, that is talk of 30 years ago and not acceptable in this day and age." Close quote. In 1956, the Dalai Lama attempted to bring Nehru over to the Tibetan side, but was rebuffed. His Holiness asked Nehru to grant him asylum in India so that he could launch a campaign to reclaim his homeland from the Chinese control. "I told him all Tibetans now pin their remaining hopes on the government and the people of India," the Dalai Lama recalls. Nehru, however, didn't seem interested in the issue. "You must realize," he said somewhat impatiently, "that India cannot support you."